20, Big 550 KTRS. On Sundays from 5 to 6, there's a sports medicine show hosted by our next guest and Andy Strickland. Dr. Rick Lehman, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
What do you think of the studios?
This place is truly unbelievable. It's like Star Trek.
It's nice in here, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is.
You not only are a doctor, well-respected, well-trusted, but you also put up with Andy Strickland on a weekly basis, so that makes you almost godlike.
It's been difficult, but we've lived through it.
You get through it, huh?
Yeah.
Let's talk Sam Bradford. So a lot of people think that because he already had the knee that was injured, that made his knee weaker and therefore was more susceptible to this second round of injury. True or false?
I think that's probably true. I think, he had his ACL reconstructed a little less than a year ago, and your incidence of re-tearing your ACL is about 20% in the first 24 months. But, it doesn't really happen very frequently, so I think everybody was a little shocked.
It didn't look very violent. It looked like it was a very simple sort of tap on the shoulder, more or less.
Well, I think that's the biggest issue. So if you're going to be in the NFL, that's going to happen to you 20 times in a game, especially today with the speed of the game, the size of the linebackers, the size of the ends, the line. So it really didn't look like much of an injury or much of an incident. And to tear your, and that's why I think the Rams initially thought everything was going to be fine. They said They came out in the media and said he was okay, his ACL was okay, and then had an MRI and it showed that his ACL was completely torn. And I think everybody was, frankly, kind of shocked from, like you said, kind of the minimal amount of trauma to his knee.
Right. He also walked off the field. Mm-hmm. He also himself thought, hey, this isn't like the last time. This doesn't feel as bad. I think it's just something very minor.
Correct. And again, he was laying on the field. He looked like he was rolling around a little bit. It took him a while to get up. It looked like he could bear weight on it right away. But clearly he knew something was going on. They rescanned him. And even though it may have not been as traumatic an injury, once the ACL tears, it's all downhill from there. So the knee gets progressively looser. You step, you pivot, your knee shifts, and boom, you're no longer in the NFL. So Even though it's a minor injury, to play with no ACL is probably not possible.
So, doctor, moving forward, he's going to have surgery again.
Correct.
And what will this mean, though, for the future if he's torn it twice?
Well, there's sort of two possibilities. One possibility is he rehabs pretty well. Maybe they take their time. Maybe they do a little bit of a different reconstruction. We do something called a double bundle reconstruction, so we reconstruct it a little bit differently, kind of like Tiger Woods had. So maybe he has a little bit of a different surgery, and maybe in a year and a half, he comes back slowly, and he comes back maybe as a backup, a second-string, third-string quarterback. The problem is he hasn't played football now in 2 years after this next layoff, and it's hard to get back into the NFL or the NBA with that kind of a layoff.
He was injured in college. It was his shoulder. He's had an injury-plagued career. I don't want to call him snake-bitten, but are some athletes just more prone to injuries than others?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, in doing what I do, and that's my whole world, are professional athletes, high-level college athletes. And you see some guys, and, he had an AC separation, didn't play a senior year in college, and then has been, besides the ACL, injury after injury with the Rams. So I think that's true. I think some guys just are not cut out for that kind of a sport. And the NFL is a hard place. I mean, the guys are huge. The guys are so fast. The plays develop so fast. And there's a question whether Sam Bradford was going to be a meaningful quarterback in the NFL absent all these injuries. Was he really good enough to play at an A level? And a good team needs an A-level quarterback. So I think you're right. I think he's one of these guys that probably is going to play his career on the IR a lot.
Right. And you just, it's so funny, and I laugh at all these draftniks and experts and all these guys. You can't go in and test how strong the ACL is. You can't. We were talking to Dick Vermeil yesterday. You can't go in and test Kurt Warner's brain to see how he will handle the pressure. So all these, pokes and prods and jumps and speeds and tests, in the end, they're all guessing.
Well, first of all, what people don't realize is the NFL is a very cerebral place. So the playbook looks like a phone book in the old days when we had phone books. And, it's a very hard sport. It's a complicated sport. The offensive schemes and the defensive schemes are very complicated. So if you're not pretty smart you can't really play in the NFL, and you have to be able to think and be flexible and change your brain patterns very quickly, because the plays develop literally in a second and a half. So no one can test that. You can take all these tests and you can do all these things in the combine, but what's going to happen when a 325-pound guy who runs faster than you do comes after you?
Right.
That's anybody's guess.
The other thing I find interesting about this, let's go back to Kurt Warner for a second. Remember when he was here, it was the thumb. And the thumb, the theory is that the thumb never really healed. He went to New York. He was a backup for Eli. Then he went to the Cardinals. He was a backup there. So he had a good year and a half, 2 years to sort of get fully healed, and then came back and had a good year and a half or two with the Cardinals at the end. Is it a situation where Sam Bradford just might need a good 2 years, year and a half of healing?
Well, I was personally involved with Kurt's thumb, so I can't really say a whole lot, but I can tell you that after it was fixed, it really didn't look very good on an x-ray. I think it did take a long time to heal. Gripping the ball, obviously, is everything, and so that was an issue, and I think it was strictly a time thing, because I think Kurt had the brain and had the foot speed and the foot quickness to play. I think Sam Bradford probably needs to get his ACL fixed. He probably needs to go away somewhere for about 6 months with some killer trainer. And you hear about these guys that train high-level athletes.
Right.
We have them in every sport. And really see if he can get to the level that he needs to be with foot speed, with quickness, ball release, etc., and see if he's really a guy that can play at that level. Now, as a backup, he's a smart kid. He probably would be a decent backup, but, you don't play that much as a backup. You talk to Gus Farad, and he said it was the greatest job in the world. I went to work every day. I never did anything.
Here's another question, though. When it comes to mind over matter, he's been injured, the same knee, and once he has his surgery, and if and when he does go back out and play again, is that going to be on his mind? Is that going to affect his play, knowing, oh, my God, what if someone tries tackling me and messing up my knee again?
Well, and that gets back to this 2-year layoff. I mean, you're 200% right. So now very minimal injury, and he re-tears his ACL. So every time he sees that defensive end coming at him, or every time he has to kind of rotate, instead of thinking about where his wide receivers are, he's thinking, boy, if I plant my foot, I'm going to end up tearing my ACL. So that's probably the hardest thing for a pro athlete, because the last time he made that move, it was a bad idea, and he can't be thinking about his knee. So you have hit it on the head why a lot of people think, he may be done.
What about ACL with non-elite athletes, the guy who's riding the bike or running into the park? Do we see a lot of ACLs with normal weekend warriors?
Well, we see a lot of ACLs in young kids. So for all the listeners out there, we see ACLs in 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds, and that's a big problem. Their growth plates are open. They need to be fixed. It used to be we didn't fix them, and they need to be fixed because otherwise the knee just breaks down. And there's surgeries for that with the growth plates open. And I think you see a lot of ACL injuries in the skiers. You live in St. Louis, you go somewhere, you ski for a week, you blow out your knee, you come back. Softball players. So it's a pretty common injury. The biggest thing we see now are women volleyball players and women basketball players, and it's like the common cold. I mean, our practice, you can't believe how many 6'2" women we see in a week with torn ACLs, and it's terrible.
So I should start hanging out at your office more often. Is what you're saying? They can't.
All men should.
They can't run from me because they got a bad knee. While we still have you, do teenagers still get Osgood Schlatter?
Frequently they do.
Yeah.
And that's a growth plate insertion with a big bump in the front of your knee problem. That's pretty painful. Do you have Osgood Schlatters?
I did as a kid, yeah. And it just sort of went away naturally, right? Is that what happens?
Well, when your growth plate closes, the bump doesn't go away, but the pain goes away. Your ability to play sports goes away. So, yeah, over a period of time, as your growth plates close, sort of it fades into the sunset.
Yeah. Dr. Rick Lehman, host of Sports Medicine with Andy Strickland, Sundays here on the Big 550 KTRS from 5 to 6. Thank you, sir. Fascinating stuff.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.
You guys are great.
Thanks. 7:30.